Someone in a studio somewhere made a decision that changed the temperature of hip-hop overnight. They looked at a Coi Leray track, looked at a YoungBoy feature, looked at a Kelis sample and said, yes, all three of these things belong together. And you know what? They were absolutely right. Welcome back to the Hip-Hop Watchdog, the channel that never sleeps on a big drop, a bigger collab, or an even bigger sample controversy. If you are not already subscribed, fix that immediately. Hit the subscribe button, smash that notification bell, and let us get into why the internet is currently having a full and complete meltdown over this record. Let us start with the foundation, the sample. Kelis, Milkshake, one of the most recognizable, most referenced, most culturally embedded records in the last 2 decades of popular music. The moment that bassline shows up anywhere, ears perk up globally. It does not matter what genre you are operating in, what era you were born in, or how deep your hip-hop knowledge goes, everybody knows that record. It is sonic shorthand for a specific kind of confidence, a specific kind of energy, and when you interpolate it into a 2026 hip-hop track, you are not just borrowing a melody, you are borrowing an entire emotional universe. And Coi Leray understood the assignment completely. Better Than Yours takes that interpolation and builds something that feels both nostalgic and aggressively current. Coi has always operated at the intersection of pop sensibility and street credibility, which is a tightrope that very few artists can walk without falling off on one side or the other. But this record plants her firmly in the middle of that wire with balance and attitude to spare. Now enter YoungBoy, and this is where the collab becomes genuinely fascinating from a chemistry standpoint. On paper, these two artists should not necessarily fit together. Coi's sonic world leans melodic, playful, and radio-friendly in its best moments. YoungBoy's world is raw, more unpredictable, built on an energy that feels like it exists slightly outside the rules everybody else agreed to follow. But that contrast is precisely why Better Than Yours works as well as it does. YoungBoy does not soften to meet the record. He meets it on his own terms, brings his own gravitational pull, and somehow the friction between the two styles creates heat instead of confusion. That is not easy to pull off. Most collabs that attempt this kind of stylistic stretch end up sounding like a compromise. This one sounds like a collision, the good kind, the kind that leaves a mark. The internet reaction has been predictably divided in the most entertaining possible way. YoungBoy's fanbase, already operating at a loyalty level that most artists would sacrifice entire albums to achieve, immediately claimed the feature as evidence that he elevates every record he touches. Coi's supporters fired back that this is her track, her concept, her sample clearance, and her moment. And somewhere in the middle of that argument, the record kept streaming, which is really the only scoreboard that matters. Here's what this collab also signals beyond the music itself. YoungBoy's market value as a feature artist in 2026 is arguably at its highest point ever. And that's a remarkable statement, given that he has spent significant portions of recent years navigating legal situations, house arrest conditions, and public controversies that would have derailed most careers permanently. Instead of derailing him, all of it seemed to concentrate his fan base into something even more intense, more devoted, and more responsive. When YoungBoy shows up on your record right now, you are not just getting a verse, you are getting access to one of the most activated audiences in the entire genre. Labels know it, independent artists know it, and Coi Leray clearly knew it when she made this call. The Kelis interpolation will generate its own separate conversation. Sample clearances in hip-hop are their own ecosystem of legal complexity and creative debate. But the early indicators suggest the original artist's camp signed off, which means this record has a clean runway to run as far as the streaming numbers will take it. And based on the opening week trajectory, those numbers are going to travel a very long way. Coi Leray picked the right sample, she picked the right collaborator, and she dropped it at exactly the right moment in a calendar year that was ready for both of them. Hip-hop does not always reward the smart play, but every once in a while the right moves line up perfectly, and this was one of those moments. Thanks for watching.